Okay, they came, they came, they came, they came, they came. This is the sort of final copy. I mean, it's funny because they're wood, so they're not copies. But this is the final cut of my journey token set. If you follow me on Instagram, this will not be much of a surprise to anyone. If you probably take place in live chats, this won't be much of a surprise to anyone. But I've been waiting for the final set of tokens to be cut and come back and make sure everything is good before obviously starting the pre-order for these lovely lovely tokens. So I want to formally introduce you to the Journey Tokens divination system. And I am so excited about this that I don't even know where to start. They're absolutely beautiful. I'm still oohing and eyeing over them. And so I think what I want to do, because I don't do anything briefly, as we all know, I want to sort of rewind for a second and give a just quick how did we get here today with these tokens in front of me, in their final bag, in their final, iteration, and how did we get here? Because I think it will make more sense to people who have been following me, sort of to see the path that we've gotten to into where I have this casting system here that I have created and have been enjoying working with, and I'm excited to be sharing with the rest of you. So I'm going to slide these lovelies over here for a minute, and I'm going to pull out some things. So it all started with a dream. As all things do, right? It all started with a dream and this spreadsheet, although I believe there was actually an iteration before this spreadsheet. The last suit has had multiple changes, but the first set of really 45, which is what they ended up being, although it has fluctuated in number, but that first set of 45 has stayed fairly consistent. And this was my original dream for an oracle deck. So if you followed my channel, you know that I have painted a version of the Lenormand system, a deck of Lenormand cards. And so once that was kind of done and I was feeling ready to start into something else, I thought that the next step that I would make would be to paint an oracle deck. But one of the things that I have issues with in oracle decks, and it's not an issue because there are ways in which I love to use systems that are more thematic, that have sort of a bunch of different cards based on a theme, and then of course you have your titles and this type of thing. There are ways in which I enjoy using those, but in a broad sense, I enjoy a system to be in play with. Tarot, of course, is a system. Lenormand is a system. Geomancy is a system, right? Reading with runes is a system. Reading with oghams is a system. These are systems that are somewhat involved. And actually, I would say oghams and runes have a little bit less of a system, actually, than something like tarot or Lenormand, where they're even Lenormand. So I'm going to say tarot is the best example of a system where you have different suits, they have different functions, they interact with each other in different ways, and there's just a system that's there. And there are oracle decks that have done that, where there are suits there perhaps, or there is a system beyond just a theme. And those kinds of things really excite me. And so I knew that if I was going to make an oracle deck, the oracle deck would have to have some degree of a system involved. Now remember that I started this, or I started thinking about it, percolating about it, spreadsheeting about it before last year. Now last year we saw an influx of decks based on animistic ways of seeing the world, a little bit more nature-based practices. They're often come under the title of shamanic oracle decks. I've done a whole video about that kind of influx of decks that were really exciting to me, because that was a little more in alignment with my personal practice. And so having decks that reflected that was really exciting. But before that, there wasn't a lot of them, or at least not a lot of them that interested me, or that just really kicked in with the way that I see the world. And so that was the basis of this, that it would be really tapped into elemental energy, really tapped into the earth, really tapped into the web, which, you know, we'll talk about more as I do more videos. That's a very important component to seeing the world for me. Really tapped into the understanding of the tree, whether that be the world tree. There's many different iterations of that in different cultures, but the understanding of an upper world, a middle world, and a lower world, and a side-to-side world, and the different things of that nature. Those types of things were important to me. And so so I started spreadsheeting this out, because I wanted, again, there to be an overarching system. I wanted there to be some suits that were involved. And then I put a keyword, just a single keyword with each one, so that I could keep track of, okay, you know, am I overlapping energies? Or if I am, is there a reason for it, and how are they different? And really just starting to build this, because I couldn't just start painting pictures. For me personally, I couldn't just start painting pictures, because it needed to fit into some sort of a system. So that's what I did. This was sort of the first step, was mapping all of this out as best I could. At first, I think I had wanted to have just some straight animal cards. That started to get unwieldy. Then I kind of changed it to OM, where there could be sort of a tree, a crystal, and an animal involved. That was getting closer to what I was looking for, but wasn't quite there yet. And so there were these, you know, obviously shifting and changing and building and growing as I sat with this for quite some time now. Now, the intention was that last year, or throughout last year, that I would get this painted. Now, I did start to paint the cards. Actually, the next thing that I did, the next thing I did was actually take some blank cards, cardstock. It's soft, or, you know, it's not super thick, but it's thicker than paper. It's got like a coating on it. And I put them into this card format with the number, the suit that it's in, the title of the card, and then sort of the key word that was associated, because I wanted to see, how did this read, right? How was this working in terms of a system? Before I started to paint these things, I wanted to feel good about where I was going. So I did that for the first 45 cards, not for any animal cards or anything like that. And I was happy, you know, I knew there was going to be some tweaking as I went, but I was happy with where things were headed. So once I sort of spreadsheeted, and then I made sort of a faux deck to work with, then it was time to start painting. And so I started with the seasonal cards, and there's some various shapes as sizes as I was sort of trying to figure that kind of thing out as well. But I started to paint through the seasons, and for me that was, I think I put, did I put the seasons out? I think so. For me that was the 8 seasons. So I do follow the wheel of the year. I don't follow the festivals per se, but I do follow the astrological points. So the equinoxes, the solstices, and the astrological dates for the cross quarters. And so there's very different energy, say for example, from the beginning of fall to the end of fall, where things are starting to fall away. And so that was how I was starting to paint these. Now I have paint with me videos on all of these, and I will try to remember to put them in the link description box below. If I don't remember, please just poke me in the comments and I will do so. I played around with the web, although I had to, thankfully I scanned this image because I messed up the web actually, because it needed to be a little bit different than that, but I had scanned it in already so I could do an overlay of the white. But anyways, I had done the web card. I had done a sample of how I thought I might do the moon phases. I also did the world tree, which is one of my favorite paintings of my personal paintings. So I did start to paint, and as I would paint them, I would scan, oh, here's the world tree card. So as I would paint them, I would scan them in and kind of print myself off a copy, the size that I expected that they would be, so that again, I could start to see how this progressed and grew. This is kind of similar to what I did with my Lenormand deck here. But I will say that I just kept hitting a roadblock. I absolutely loved the images that the paintings for the seasons. I use them, I set them out for the different seasons. I have prints of them in my shop. People use them to set out for the seasons. So I absolutely love the paintings that I was doing. They were feeling like the colorations that I was looking for. Everything was like, oh, I liked what I was doing, but it just would not go forward. I thought, well, last year I was doing a full, my first entire cycle of teaching the different classes that I wanted to teach. That was a lot of work, getting sort of handouts ready and the slideshows ready, and all of that kind of stuff was a lot more work. So I kind of wrote it off to the fact that I just had, my brain was spread in too many different directions, and it just wasn't the time for it to be painted. But when it started to come to the end of 2018, I said, okay, this I love this system. Like, it's time to put this into being. And so my goal was, okay, I'm going to start painting, and I'm just going to I've got this framework all here. Now I just got to sit down and paint through these. And I felt like I was sitting in front of a wall, even though I was starting to paint. So I was painting other paintings. I was loving artistically where I was going. So I was enjoying where I was at in terms of painting and artistic expression, but not for this deck. And I remember that I had kind of wrapped up, or I found my shamanistic deck video that I thought I had put up, but I hadn't. Regardless, I had just put that up and made it public, and I had seen another deck that was going out, and I remember thinking to myself, do we need another deck like this? Like, does the world need another deck like this? And my general answer is yes. You all know me. The more decks, the merrier. And certainly my making a deck that really reflects the way that I see the world and the way that I see energy interacting with each other. That's for me. And if anybody else wants to go along, that's great. But it's really for me. So, technically the answer is yes. There is always room for another deck. And yet part of me was like, I wasn't feeling the deck in this system. The other part of the equation is that I had just come off of teaching 2 casting classes. So I had taught an OM class, and then I had taught back-to-back. I taught an OM class, and I taught a rune class. And I was really enjoying casting. That would have been my initial, you keep trying to go back and figure out like exactly what your first thing is, because we're talking about the early 90s, right, or mid 90s, and that's not always easy for me to figure out. But I believe the first, because if you've taken my classes, I coded into a game system that I was playing and doing some coding on. I coded in an OM box and a rune box. I thought actually it was just an OM box, but it was actually a rune box and an OM box that you could randomly take out, and it would give you a message and this kind of thing. And I had a set of rune stones, which I still have. I didn't bring it over here. I know those are from the mid 90s, and that was well before my first tarot deck or oracle deck. I was certainly using playing cards as well at that time. So, but this would have been my first divination system, was a casting system. And I really enjoy, when going back, kind of rolling back into it and teaching 2 back-to-back, I was like, I'm loving casting and the way that the symbols can then interact with each other, be on top of each other, form lines, form clumps and clusters of things. I just love that way of reading. And so it was literally that light bulb moment of 1 minute saying, do we need another deck? And the second saying, why could it work as a casting system? So I kind of moved from here to starting to paint, right? To starting to get there, getting blocked there, to saying to myself, could this work as a casting system? And so then, of course, I went to my, trusty craft store. I'm going to try to pull them all out because they're kind of intermingled here. But I went to my trusty craft store. I've got a couple runes that are thrown in here as well because I had thought about combining runes with it. So I was playing with things, but I went through and just got these little wood things, which I highly recommend if you're learning to read runes or oghams or something, and you just want to make yourself a set where you can, I've got video on this, where you can, draw the rune, draw the name of the rune and draw a keyword for the rune. This is a great cheap way to, to teach and learn to teach yourself these systems. So I just went back over there. I'd used these before, picked up some, and drew one on each real quick and started to use them to see, is this going to work? And I did run into a couple of snafus. I was like, having the 8 seasons and the 8 moon phases seemed to be a little bit of an overkill. Just in terms of using them as casting, I generally cast 9 figures when I cast runes or oghams and my own journey tokens, and so you could end up with, say, 4 or 5 of moons or 4 or 5 different seasons, and it was a little bit overkill. So I thought, okay, so I got rid of, I just kept the 4 main seasons, and I kept the 4, I kept a new moon, a full moon, waxing and a waning, because that's the energy, at least overall our energy there is in play. That helped things, so I did some tweaking with this because this allows you to play with it, try it, see, is it going to work as a casting system? And I got really excited about it. So that was phase 2, and I said, yes, I actually love this as a casting system. The next thing was to go, and this is where some magic happened for me, because the next thing was that I wanted a pretty set to be able to work with and be able to take pictures of, as I really saw, okay, how am I going to now produce these, right? It's not a card, it's not paper, I can't go to a printer. How am I going to go about producing these? Now, I have rune sets, right? So I have a set like this. I have a set, another beautiful set of Northumbrian runes. It's over there in a beautiful wheel. So I have purchased many different forms of these, like geomancy sticks. So I knew that there was sort of, and these sort of sticks that have laser thing on here from Alaska Laser Made. So I knew that there were, laser printing for wood that would probably be what I would want to go with. But one of the issues that I had was that a lot of my sets when purchased were made in cedar, because cedar is, or some other light wood, because it's probably easier to put through the laser printer. And they're beautiful and they smell amazing, but I wanted something a little bit heavier. And so I was just kind of skimming on Etsy to try to find somebody to just make me a single set. And I stumbled on a set of inspiration tokens. So, as some of you know, if you follow me, I do play D&D, and inspiration tokens are tokens that the Dungeon Master can give to a player if they've, let's say, really role-played a great, had a great scene where they role-played, or they made a hard decision based not on what they wanted to do, but based on, say, what their character actually would do. You can award them an inspiration point, and that player can then turn that in for an advantage on a roll. And so people make them so that you can buy, say, a set of inspiration tokens, and on the other side it says inspiration token, however that might be. And so that if you're the Dungeon Master, you can physically give them inspiration tokens so that whenever they want to turn that back in for an advantage on a roll, they can. So a little D&D break, because it makes sense when we get here. But I saw a shop who made inspiration tokens, and as soon as I saw the back of it, which is a flattened out D20 shape. A D20 is a dice that is used in playing RPG style games such as D&D, but I also use these for myself. I use them for casting geomancy because these shapes are actually, there's the sets of dice you usually see are 7 dice, but 4 of those 7 dice are platonic shapes for solids. Platonic solid shapes for the elements. So for example, the D20 is the shape for water. The D6, which is a square, which you're used to, that is a shape for earth. This is the kind of a pyramid shape here, and this is the shape for fire, and this sort of diamond type shape is the shape for air. So I use these to cast a geomancy figure all at once because it has the platonic shapes there. So I knew that, and so as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh my goodness, 2 things came into mind. One, it's the shape of water. Water is energy that flows. It's our feelings and emotions, our internal realm, and the way that that connects outward to other people. Perfect, right? It's also, when it's flattened out in this form, it has a web-like appearance, which is the basis for my system. You have these connecting points here like you have on a web. It made me think of that. And I thought, okay, that's awesome. I'm going to order a set of my shapes, of my symbols, in that type of thing. I'm making some changes to the back. I think it had like D20 written on the back, and you know, it had other things on it. But I liked the shape of it. I liked the concept of the back being a D20, and so I thought, okay, I'm just going to order a set so I can play with them. So that's what I did. They're this size, which are beautiful. You can see the size difference. Here, I'll zoom in a little bit later, but their size difference is pretty significant. But this is the size that her inspiration token. I said, let's just order a set so we can see what they would look like. And I loved them. I'm going to zoom in now a little bit here. So I absolutely loved how they turned out. I thought that they cut really well. They look really nice. And some magic happened because of the flattened D20 shape, that it's put onto a hexagon. Because of the hexagon, all of a sudden, lots of little options for readings just started blossoming because it makes this honeycomb shape. And so that happened. It just took off with some amazing ways to be able to read with the system, not just as a casting system, but in ways of making different spreads and reading because of this connective way the hexagons work together. That just was one of those synchronistic moments where all of a sudden I knew whatever I was going to do in the future, it would be in a shape of a hexagon, because I absolutely loved what that opened up within the system. The other thing that it did for me is I was thinking, oh, it's a D20, right? Yeah, D20. All of a sudden, the section, which was 20 of them, originally, as you can see, well, yeah, I think it was 40. Yeah, it was 20 of them originally, where sometimes I was putting animals in there. I tried various configurations, but there was extra 20. I didn't want a 65 symbol set of casting. That's a large casting. You have to think OMs, you're talking about 20 unless you use the extra newer ones, which makes it 25. Runes, you're looking at 24. I really didn't want to go to a 65 symbol casting system. But with this, with the aha moment, I thought, hey, if I have 45 symbols and three of them were a broader category. So this is this is the suit of nature. And if we have the animal, and we have plant, and we have crystal, we could just read it in general. We have the energy of plant support, we have the energy of crystal support, and we have the energy of animal support, and what those might mean in a more general sense. So we could just stay general, or we could take a D20 die, cast the die, So let's say I pulled the animal, cast the die for, you know, what further, if we want to take that down further, and this is a printout of my guidebook, but I just want to show real quick. And then have a chart where I can go down to the animal section and to 2, and I can say, okay, that is a snake. That is the energy of snake. It's the energy of shedding. It's the energy of losing your own skin, your old skin, and starting that fresh with a sense of vulnerability at the beginning, moving towards transformation, all of that. So now we've taken animal support and we've turned it into a specific animal support. So all of a sudden with these 3 symbols and a dice, I now have an opportunity for 60 more, so 20 animals, 20 plants, and 20 crystals to be able to come into play in the reading. Now I've also made sure in the guidebook to include a blank place for you to put your own animals, plants, and crystals, and then it becomes very unique to the person that's using them. You can either use my chart, use some of those and fill in different ones, and all of a sudden there is an adaptable system built in of 60 more energies that could come into play. So because of the random happenstance, right, the synchronistic happenstance, I like to call it, of seeing these inspiration dice, inspiration tokens, that brought me to A, the shape, which makes some amazing spreads, and B, the D20, which opened up the ability to have a whole bunch more energies show up in a reading. I love the random acts like that happen. So I had this set. I absolutely loved this set. Let me zoom back out a little bit. But the problem is that even though this, you know, opened up to a lot of energies for spreads and things, this is a casting system. And generally, as I said, I read or I cast for oghams with runes. I like using 9. And so you would randomly, you know, go in, dig around, grab your 9 out randomly, then shake them up and cast them. Now, the problem with this size is that they are very difficult to cast in terms of shaking them up. They literally, you know, just kind of stay where they are at in your hand and just bounce up and down. And I feel like I have fairly large hands. Now, you can do some things to manipulate them, which I do even with the smaller ones, to get them moving and shaking, but you really can't get a nice, they do cast nicely, and that's the wood. I'm really pleased with the wood, but it's difficult. It was just too big of a size, and it also creates a higher cost. It would significantly reduce the cost of them by being able, or at least pull it down into a range in which I was comfortable by going smaller, and then I was able to cast it. So I was waiting though, because I do love these, and I was waiting to get the smaller size to see A, if it would help with casting, and B, if I still liked the smaller size. And I can say that I absolutely love the size. So that brings us to the final iteration of the set. This is a little token that's going to go on the bag itself of the sort of the logo of the tree, which stands for the journey tokens, and that's kind of going on to the bag itself, but with 45 tokens. But you can see with 3, 6, 9, I can now, when I shake, you can't see, but when I shake them, they're actually moving around in there. And I can, you know, again, you can manipulate. It's always good to manipulate. So the fun about casting, right, is that you can manipulate them, shake them up, and give them your cast, right? And they are fantastic. The other thing that I really loved about this particular person was that she uses alder wood, whereas most places seem to be like maybe pine maybe birch. I'm not a wood expert in terms of doing laser casting, but they were fully into the softwood categories. They had a lightness to them that are beautiful, but they don't feel substantial when you drop them down. And so once I got the first set of these with the alder, which is a hardwood, it's right on the border of, it's a soft hardwood, but it's still a hardwood, and I loved the feel of them. And that was important to me. This is a tactile thing. And so I was so excited about how they ended up feeling, and the size is beautiful and everything works out the way I wanted to. And so here we are now. So that was a very long, how did we get here to the journey tokens? And that's how we got there. I'll be doing more videos, obviously, but the pre-order for this is opening up on March 1st. Whatever, you may be watching this later, or you may be watching it today, you may be watching it tomorrow, but the pre-order for this will start on March 1st and go through the month of March. And then the order will be placed on April 1st, you know, just depending on how many orders are necessary and needed, and so then the order will be placed on them, and then when the order is fulfilled, then they'll be shipped out, as I did with my Lenormand deck. I really wanted to have everything done, everything to my liking, everything passing muster, and so that all that has to happen is an order being placed. That's just how I like to do my pre-orders, because then there's less room for needing to wait for things and things taking longer than they're supposed to. So it's just the way that I like to do them. And so that's why, I mean, people have been asking me, when are you going to put these up? When are you going to put these up? I'm like, when I am like 100% satisfied with it just being ready to place an order. So yeah, I will be again doing another video, you know, using them, talking about them more, going into the symbols more, but I wanted to get a kind of give a sort of how did I get from 0 to here. So what you will be receiving with the purchase of the journey tokens, and I will have a link to, well, I'll probably put this up today, so it probably won't go live until tomorrow, but on the 1st, I will have a link in the description box of where the pre-order is. But you'll receive 45 wood journey tokens that are out of alder wood, is the wood that they are made out of. The backs are like this, and the fronts are carved, lasered in to the wood itself, so that the symbols, there's a little line at the bottom of the symbol that shows whether it's upright or reverse. There's different ways you can use that. I typically in casting use face down things a little bit more in reverse, but it does, there are ways to use whether, you know, how it's positioned in certain terms of turning as well. And then some of the symbols you simply need to. So for example, if you have the 4 directions and, you know, where is it pointing? So you could actually have done that, but I have one for each of the 4 directions. It'd be a little bit hard to tell which direction that was pointing in. So it does have that there, and of course it opens it up for how you might want to use those. So there are 45 of those. The other little thing of, you know, trying to put pieces together was the bag itself. I really wanted a large bag because I'm not going to try to scoop all those up right now. But because when you're doing a casting, you're not certainly not with 45 symbols, but I don't cast, say, all of the runes. Every once in a while I will, but I don't in general. As I said, I generally will pull out. So sometimes I'm just going to be, and I'm going to pull one, and then I'm going to shuffle, 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 pull another, shuffle, 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 pull another, and I might just do a 3-figure reading, or I might be pulling for a spread, but I still want to get my hand in there, shuffle, 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 and then pull. You can't use, you know, I was getting those kind of standard bags that you get, but you can't get your hand into them. So then it became the hunt for this size bag. This is an 8 by 10 inch natural muslin bag, so that you can get your hands in, shuffle them up, you know, Let's just throw some in here. Really get your hand in and mix and mix and mix, and then grab out your 9 figures, shake them up and cast them. That was important to me because that's how I grab figures, and so I certainly wanted the ability to do that. So that is what this is. There's also, of course, a token that is, I didn't really want marketing all over it. I started gonna have the name Journey Tokens put on the front of it, something similar to the front of the guidebook. So something similar to this on the bag itself. But I personally don't like in my sacred space, I don't put decks with all the box information. It's usually just the deck sitting there. I tend to keep my runes in glass jars. I have a bag of crystal runes, and it has a name on it, and it drives me crazy. Like, I need to replace this bag because that just bothers me to have logos on in my spiritual space like that. So I decided, no, I wanted to just look clean and beautiful and not have anything on that, but then still have a tag on it. But even on the tag, it's just the tree all put together representing all 3 realms in balance. And so it doesn't have any sort of, it's just beautiful, and it doesn't have any sort of advertising type stuff on it. So I was really happy with that. And then of course a D20 dice. Now you can get D20 die everywhere. There are game stores everywhere. There are sometimes even Barnes and Nobles. You can get sets of polyhedral dice and take out the D20 if you find one you really like how it looks. I have tons of D20s and dice in general between D&D and the way that I cast Geomancy. I have a copper dice D20 that I absolutely love. You can get that on Amazon. You can get individual D20. So there's all, people are going to be able to find what is amazing. You can get crystal D20s. Like, you can get all kinds of things in terms of D20s to be able to get what you want. I was concerned about anything heavy thrown into the bag because I didn't want to keep it separate. And and bang it around. I don't care if mine get banged up, because to me that's just going to make them look used and natural, but I certainly didn't want them being banged up for other people. So everybody's going to get a dual tone, random colors D20, so they have one to work with, but that's certainly an area in which you can personalize your own set. So with the Journey Tokens will be a PDF guidebook. That is for many reasons. I did do a physical guidebook for my Lenormand deck for the first run, but shipping is a big issue in terms of shipping costs, especially overseas, and wanting to at least keep the tokens. It's more than almost double the set of an OM or rune set, and so it costs more to produce, and I wanted the heavier wood and so on and so forth. And so those kinds of things obviously add cost to things, and so trying to keep the cost down as well as the weight in terms of shipping. And some people are guidebook people and some people are not guidebook people. So I opted to do a PDF guidebook. But this time I am going to have it formatted so that it can be printed pretty cheaply on Lulu if you would choose to have it. I know Benabel Wen does that. There's somebody else I bought a deck from that had the option. It was all kind of configured so that you could order it through, I think that was Lulu as well. That just gives a nice opportunity for those people who really want a physical copy. You can either print it like I did. It's a square 8.5 by 8.5 guidebook. This is not the finished, this is my editing. Me putting them onto beautiful disc binding systems so that I can work on editing things. Because if you don't ever just edit on the screen. You've got to edit on paper. But anyways, you can print it off and just cut the bottom half off and staple it and have, you know, your own print off copy. You can use it on your device because it's a PDF, or you can print it off and have it bound if you so choose. So that's how I am doing the guidebook. But I'm not going to go into this too deeply. Talks about casting system, talks about my system and why I've chosen to call it what it is, and synchronistic happenstance, working with blockages or reversals, going into spreads. There's so many great options for shapes and then plugging different things in. So for example, the hopscotch, it looks like a hopscotch board if you're old enough to have played hopscotch. So it's a four token symbol spread that you can plug different configurations. This happens to be a north, south, east, and west directional, and then sample readings there. There's a honeycomb shape, an example of an energetic elemental spread for the honeycomb shape. There's a garden path shape, and you can plug in doing a get there reading or some other type of reading like that, again with sample readings. There is the wonderful hive shape. This was so exciting for me because this happened, again, I had just wanted to make sure I had them all when I first got the my first set of the tokens, and so I was laying them out in order of them, and just kind of laying them out so I would A, make sure that they were all there, and B, so that you know, because I thought it would be cool to see them all out in one and be able to take a picture of them. And so when I did that, I realized that it made a wonderful tableau, honeycomb shaped tableau. And that just made me so excited. And so I actually went through and configured this tableau, and you will actually get a piece of paper. This one is not, it's almost, this image here is not to size, but there will actually be a printout that you can get, that you will have with this, so that you can print it out on a piece of paper and actually have a tableau where you can shake them all up, mix them up, lay them all out, and then you can, for example, find, if you found the spirit, then all around it you have the four elements: active energy, receptive energy. If you find spring, you're going to find winter, spring, summer, and autumn together. If you find the middle world, you can find the upper world and the lower world, the new moons, and so on and so forth, so that you can actually lay them all out in random order and look underneath to get that extra layer beneath it, much like reading a grand tableau in Lenormand. That was, again, exciting happenstance that happens when, just because of the shape, that just makes my heart sing. You know me, I just love this stuff. Of course, this is a casting method, so you know the guidebook is going to go into casting, both free casting as well as casting on a spread cloth that many of us have and or can get. I actually have somebody who's working with me to make my own this exact spread cloth, because this is how I like to read, but I'll talk more about that later. How do you go about reading? So there's going to be example readings in there with casting methods, and that's about where I'm at in terms of getting that into paper format. I've got lots of notes, so now I have to go through and get the notes, and we'll come back with more information on that. But what you will have is keywords for each of the symbols, a paragraph about the symbols, information about each of the individual symbols, and how to work with those. And then, of course, in the back, there will be the chart for animal, plant, and crystal energy. I have them broken into fire, air, water, and earth. So there are fire animals, air animals, water animals, and earth animals. Fire plants, fire or air plants, water plants, and earth plants, and same thing with crystals. And I have to thank my friend Patrick for a great deal of help with the crystals. Bam. And I also have to thank my friend Larissa from the Bard's Lament for the cacti. So each of the plants has a tree, a fruit, a flower, an herb, and a cacti that is in the fire category, a tree, fruit, a flower, herb, and a cacti that is in the air, and so on and so forth. Each of my animals has an insect, a reptile, land animal, water animal, and air animal in the fire, air, water, and earth. And so this is something that can be used to, again, cast when you get those three, as I talked about. But then, of course, a blank space for, you can input the ones that you do like out of my set. But let's say you have specific animal that you, or your certain totems that you work with. Well, you can see where they would best fit in, pull those out, and again, have your own, or just completely do your own chart of the herbs and the plant and the animals and the crystals that you choose to work with. There, you can either have them elementally done or you don't have to. I really like this, how open it makes things, because it does allow you 60 energetic spaces that can be very specific to how you work with these, or would like to work with these energies. So that's kind of in general what the guidebook was. Again, it will be PDF in this 8.5 by 8.5 format, with the option for you to either print it at home or be able to print it, have it bound and printed for actually pretty cheap price. I want to say the way that I'm going to bind mine, which is, you know, was really nicely bound, I think was $5. And I think to just do a quicker binding, maybe a spiral binding, was like $3. So it's pretty cheap. So yeah, that's all I think I can stop for the moment. Again, there will be more videos talking about the different different tokens, the different symbols that are there, and going a little bit more into how I have been reading with them. I will give you, and this information will be on the website too as well, but I will give you the suits here. The suits we have are the journey suit. These are directions. These are the upper, middle, and lower world. This is the path that we're on. The elements, which are the 4 elements, as well as spirit or source, and whether that elemental energy is active or receptive. We have the energetic points here. These can relate to how energy moves and how we're physically interacting with energy within ourselves. For me, I think about those with the cauldrons in Celtic viewpoint of the world, such as the cauldron of warming, motion, and wisdom. That's how I work a lot with them. But they definitely relate to the chakras, if the chakra points are things that you work with, and so on and so forth. So those are, I think, workable for people, whether they work with the chakra system or they don't, and are going to follow a little bit more into other ways of working with those energy points. Then there's a section on cycles. These are moon cycles, seasonal cycles, the cycles of growth, such as from conception to childhood to, you know, maturing into adulthood, and these types of cycles there. Then there is the natural suit of nature, which is the crystals and the animals and the plants. So that is a little long nutshell. Take it all in a nutshell kind of thing. I'm really excited about it. Again, people have had a lot of patience. I just like to have things completely finished and ready to go, ready to roll before putting things up. So it just makes things a lot more smooth. And so I appreciate everybody's patience as I did do some teasers as I was working with them. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. If nothing else, I hope that you have enjoyed at least the being able to see the process that goes from an idea, goes through some different iterations, and then sort of ends up where we're at here with a casting system, and how that, you know, what does that look like? What does that mental process, at least for me, look like? And so if nothing else, I hope that that was of interest to all of you, and I thank you for taking the time to watch.